Hi everyone, I'm Stan from the Line Pioneers podcast and welcome. So today I really wanted to talk about larger scale planning in South Australia. Recently a paper has been released called the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan, and today we're here with Craig Holden from the Planning Commission of South Australia. He's the chair of the commission, and we're going to talk about all kinds of things around the GARP. But first of all, the podcast is sponsored by Eagle Vision, and we partner with property developers across Australia who value transparency and a straightforward process where they pretty much know exactly how the visualization side of things is going to be rolled out. So now to the podcast. And Adelaide over the last couple of years has been going from strength to strength, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons why this paper and the need for that document has been brought out. Some of the stats behind it, we've grown by a fair bit and projected to grow by nearly another 700,000 people by 2051, which kind of represents almost 50% increase to the state, right? So, Craig, I guess, how were the decisions around the GARP paper and a bit of background to it all? How did it all come about?
Thank you, Stan, and hello everybody. This started actually back in 2014 when John Rao was the planning minister in a previous Labor government, and he was very ambitious for reform. And so John Rao had an expert panel. That expert panel was chaired by Brian Hayes QC, a leading planning lawyer in South Australia. And that looked at all of our planning systems right across the state, and it was decided there would be a new planning system. And so the Development Act, as it was at the time, was replaced by the PDI Act, the Planning Development Infrastructure Act in 2016. That act was the greatest change in planning in my time, and I've been around a while. What it did was it transformed all of the local councils across the state, all their planning regulations, which over time had become bespoke to each council area, very complicated. John Rao said we're going to have one planning system right across the state, one suite of policies. And so the State Planning Commission was established under that act, an independent body. I chair it, and we have half a dozen commission members. Our role is to provide advice to the government on all matters planning. So when the commission was established, we had to do a number of things. One was we had to establish the state planning policies, which are the hierarchy of policies for the state, which was done. We had to establish a community engagement charter, very important, so that all the discussions around planning were at the policy front end, not at the DA back end, where all the trouble arises in approvals, to give the development sector more certainty and the community more certainty about what is going to transpire. Another major role for the Commission was to establish the Planning and Design Code. So that whole new code was brought in 2016, 2021. We had a lot of community engagement across the state in terms of bringing the code in. And finally, and most importantly too, it's fully digital. So that planning system now is fully digital and is updated regularly as new information and new data comes to the fore. Yeah. Another major requirement of the new Act, the PDI Act, was that the Commission would undertake the 7 new regional plans across South Australia. There was a 30-year plan. The original one was 2010. John Rao updated it in 2017. But part of the new Act was the Commission had to embark upon a whole new suite of plans for South Australia. So back in August last year, the Commission released a discussion paper. That discussion paper established all of the issues about planning for the next 30 years across South Australia. That discussion paper was out on consultation for 3 months. We did an enormous amount of work engaging with local government, state agencies, the community, the development sector, as to the question is, where are we going to plan for the next 30 years where industry and jobs go? That discussion paper established a whole lot of principles, and they were essentially, back in John Rao's role, he created the character preservation districts, 2 Acts of Parliament, one for the Barossa Valley and one for McLaren Vale, very large parcels of land at which those townships could not grow under that Act of Parliament. And so any future government that wants to change the Character Preservation District Acts going to require both houses to agree, and I can't.
In
my lifetime, Stan, I don't see that happening. And the reason to preserve that was it's quite easy to chop up vineyards into housing and grow McLaren Vale or Tanunda, but that would destroy the economic value of the wine industry and the associated industries that support the wine industry. So it was key to those two acts of Parliament.
Yeah.
Secondly, John created the environmental food production area. He also noted that, which is really a growth boundary. Right. South Australia, as you would all know, is quite low density and spread out across the metropolitan plain. But if you look at the geography, on the west we've got Gulf St Vincent, yeah. On the east you've got the Mount Lofty Ranges, and now you've got the environmental food production area. Now that goes all the way from Cape Jarvis to Victor Harbour, across to across to Murray Bridge, all the way up to Gawler. Yeah, that's 11,000 square metres. It's in a planning sense, that's called the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan zone. In that area, roughly 85% of South Australians live and 85% of business is done. But what I just described to you doesn't leave a lot of land for housing, so you can't go into the Adelaide Hills and just expand all the townships because they're in the environmental food production area. And the reason that John did that was to contain the development to within the large footprint we have. So if you think of South Australia's metropolitan area, it's a triangle that goes, it's got the coast down one side, and it's got the Mount Lofty Ranges, the Wollonga Fault Scarp, all the way down to Sellex, and then it stops. So we've got that geography to deal with. So we've only got about 10 years supply of land in the south. That's through to Aldinga, which is underway now. Villawood have just won a tender for Aldinga, and south of that is Sellex, and then that's it down south. You can't go into the escarpment and go into the Wollonga escarpment, or then you're into the environmental food production area.
So what about anywhere further beyond Sellex?
No, that's it. Wow. So what I've just described to you, that huge 11,000 square metres of land, only 10% of it, under the current legislation, can actually be built on.
Oh wow.
So part of our challenge when we put out the discussion paper a year ago was to highlight these challenges. We said, right, where can the growth go? We also took advice from the ABS and from government departments and our own research to say, well, if population continues to grow at even a modest 1%, 1.2%, whatever that number is, over the horizon from 15 to 30 years, we're going to need another 700,000 people.
Yeah.
And that's based on a slightly higher number, just to make sure we don't undercook it, as it were. Sure. That's a lot of people, and that's a lot of houses. So we've currently got zoned land in the area I just described to you for about 200,000 houses. Right. We need about 300,000 houses. So we're looking for, over that 15 to 30 year horizon, we're looking for another 100,000 odd houses. Where do they go? So the geography that I've just described to you, so it's not just the geography, it's where do the jobs go? That's because we want to put people where the jobs are. So industry is in the north. So all of the Edinburgh parks, you've got the Port of Adelaide, you've got the new expressway that goes all the way up now through to interstate connections and the like. Yep. So all of the industry, the majority of the industry will be in the north in the next 30 years. And so
all the way up to Elizabeth?
All the way up to Elizabeth, but a large parcel of land is called Edinburgh Parks. It's near the Edinburgh Air Force Base. It's a huge parcel of land, and that will carry a lot of the heavy lifting with logistics and all those kinds of things. So, so as a result of that discussion paper, we released the draft Greater Adelaide Regional Plan back 2 weeks ago, and we're out for a 6-week public consultation period, and we've been doing seminars and team sessions for a whole raft of people, the public, to participate. On the 4th of November, that ceases. Yep. We will then take into consideration all of that information, and under our new community engagement charter, we produce a What We've Heard report, and so that's online, so people can go to our Plan SA portal. They'll be able to see everybody's submissions, what they say, what they think, where industry should go, where the houses should go, do they agree with what we're saying, and so on. So that will come back to the Commission in January. We'll then put it to the Minister Champion, who will put it to Cabinet, and the plan is that by March next year, this plan will become locked in. But Stan, it becomes locked in at that point in time. What we have in South Australia is a planning system that's fully digital. So we have all of the data coming into the Commission and the Planning and Land Use Services, the government's planning department. And what that tells us is what's actually really happening on the ground. Where is land being supplied? Where are the titles created? We have a land use dashboard in our planning system. It's live, and so we can update that constantly. So the idea here is that with this new planning design code being fully digital and the regional plans being fully digital, we'll be able to track going out the 15, 30 years what's really happening. What this also means is, and really importantly, we can coordinate land use rezonings with infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so what has been a failure across the country, particularly since COVID, with population growth, I note today in the paper that last year it's 495,000 people in the last calendar year came to Australia. Right. These are big numbers. And so it's really important that we have a handle on this growth. So we'll have the real data as to who's coming to South Australia, where are they going, where do we need to focus new zoning. So whilst this Greater Adelaide Regional Plan is looking 15 to 30 years out, some of that land out to 30 years is caught in the environmental food production area. Parts of Angle Vale, parts of Roseworthy. We're looking forward, we suspect in that 15 to 30 year horizon need to be rezoned with the government of the day to deal with those issues. But importantly, it's the infrastructure story that's the big piece. Yeah. Now, you will have noted that this government, a year ago, Minister Champion created a housing infrastructure planning development unit. Minister Champion recognised that coordinating land use zoning on its own won't do it. You need to actually coordinate all of the infrastructure that's going to go with it. That's sewer, power, water, all the hard infrastructure. Yeah. And SA Water here have been not caught out as such. That since COVID, we've just had huge take up. Home builder through the Morrison government just drove demand. Land just sold very quickly. So a lot of our land developers sold a whole lot of land in that 2020 to 22 period, and so there's now a catch-up. So the infrastructure story,
water is now trying to
it's a big piece. So Minister Champion has now taken control of SA Water. He's also overseeing the Housing Trust, Renewal SA, and so he has a big portfolio. And I meet regularly with Minister Champion, and he has a clear focus on ensuring that moving forward we have infrastructure coordinated with rezoning. So where we have rezonings in South Australia, they're called code amendments. Those code amendments will be coordinated with the infrastructure story. And it's not just the hard infrastructure, it's the soft infrastructure too. So
we're talking about roads?
We're talking roads, we're talking all of those things. We have also spent quite a bit of time this last 6 months getting all of the data from where we were, the discussion paper. We've been talking to government departments, health, education, transport. So we're going to release, when the new GARP is released in end of March next year, that will coordinate with Infrastructure SA's 20-year infrastructure plan and with the Department of Transport, their 20-year plan as well. Right. So the idea is that we coordinate all of that infrastructure with those departments as well. What it also means is that government departments traditionally work on sort of 4-year cycles, election cycles, those sorts of things, pretty much in silos. Right. So what this plan does is it says that you will now know health department, education, all the transport and so on. You're going to know where the people are going. You're going to know where the industry is going. You'll have plenty of years to budget and plan for where the next police station's going, where the next school, next hospital and so on. Also, it means that we can make sure we provision for land, whilst the rezonings are occurring in the forward years, we allocate sufficient land for schools, police, health, education, all of those things. But importantly too, we need to make sure we've got plenty of greening and open space. That's right. One of the Commission members were keen to ensure that as we get this development and growth, we ensure there's plenty of opportunity for biodiversity, greening, bike pathways, all of those things, so that we can actually ensure that where you choose to live and where you're able to live in South Australia, that there's plenty of choice in terms of greening as well. So we've been working with Green Adelaide, who are part of DEW, established by the government a couple of years ago, to look at all the greening policies in South Australia. So that's another key initiative that we've been looking to.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about that. So, in the paper, from what I read, the way things have been done, it's more about, I think, conservation in a way, or understanding what the green spaces are going to be like, and trying to tap into some of the Aboriginal ways of handling things as well. So,
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so what we know is that we need to have sustainable development. So it's not just the National Construction Code bringing in its new 7-star ratings and its livability. That's one aspect of it. But where people live, we do know that people benefit and value trees. We know that trees, greenery and so on is seriously important to our well-being, our physical health, also to the value of properties. We all know that
That's right.
suburbs,
right?
The green leafy suburbs is where the growth is, and so we want to ensure that our new developments in the greenfield area, those areas are
replicate similar kind of.
That's exactly right, and that's a conversation we have to have with local government as well to ensure that the development sector, whilst it places the trees and gardens and the like in, they're maintained. This is always an issue for local councils because they're trying to balance budgets, whilst we are trying to ensure that there's a healthy green environment, particularly with biodiversity. That's become a key issue. And if you look at the successful developers, they understand this. So it's not a matter of just chopping up land. It's a matter of creating an amenity and a sustainable amenity so that communities can enjoy where they live. And truthfully, you get better underlying land values, and for your members, they know this well. Hence, they will target the established areas.
Sure.
My day job is I develop medium height apartment buildings in the city of Adelaide, and we're most fortunate. I've got quite a number I've built on one of the squares in the city, Hurdle Square, and it's a 5-minute walk to the parklands. And so we know that people value amenity, services and the like. They value green open space, which is a really important consideration when you're considering where you're going to develop.
Yeah, great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the infrastructure side of things. So your paper, it's going to have community information, it'll have strategic information. With the new sort of the tunnels that are being built to Torrensville to Darlington, that kind of stuff, how will the paper actually take that into account, if at all?
Well, the Torrens to Torrens has been an initiative that's been pursued by this and previous governments, and the intention is to relieve the congestion on the metropolitan streets, and they are like Marion Road, Brighton Road, Goodwood Road, Unley Road, Fullerton Road. They get a lot of traffic from the south. And so
these are all north-south arterials for those that are outside.
Yes. So, and what this will do is it'll free up access. So if you're living in the southern part of Adelaide, you'll be able to drive all the way through the tunnels, all the way up to the Barossa with hardly a traffic light. As it is at the moment with the new expressway north, you can leave the city of Adelaide, which I did only a few days ago, and you can get to the Barossa with about one set of traffic lights. At Port Road, you get onto you turn right and away you go. So, and interestingly, that expressway was designed many years ago for Roxby Downs to bring. It had a commercial purpose, but what's happened is it's completely opened up the northern suburbs, and you can be from the city of Adelaide to the Barossa in 50 minutes with one set of traffic lights. So it's made a huge difference in the north. So what we've identified with the infrastructure that you quite rightly say is that Minister Champion established this housing infrastructure and planning unit a year ago. He's now got quite a team involved. Their role, and we're starting with Mount Barker to bring in infrastructure schemes. So the deeds that some of your members might be familiar with are clunky instruments, and they don't actually account for time. And so with the infrastructure, we're starting with strategies with Murray Bridge. Murray Bridge is one of those areas that was identified for growth. So in our plan, and I commend your audience to go to the digital plan and have a look at it. So if you Google Greater Adelaide Regional Plan, you'll find it. You'll find frequently asked questions. You'll find a summary document, but it's a live document. You might have a piece of land somewhere in metropolitan Adelaide, and you can actually zoom in and see
Exactly what's zoning
and
it
see
is
and see exactly what's being proposed under the draft
Right.
plan, what rezoning is proposed, what the infrastructure is, biodiversity, all of these things. It's quite an amazing digital system which is such a valuable tool for understanding where the growth is, where it's happening, and where the opportunities lie. So we released it 2 weeks ago, and people are madly finding out, particularly in the north, where the majority of the growth will be, in the north. So what we identified in the paper was that we have the 4 major highways out of Adelaide, the expressway, the northeast, the southeast freeway, and the southern expressway down south. There's a lot of infrastructure, billions of dollars worth. They carry a lot of freight and a lot of passenger movement. And so the areas that we've identified for growth are the Victor Harbor, Goolwa region. That will continue to grow as a lifestyle location. And in the forward years, there will be more land rezoned for those areas. Murray Bridge is a big growth area. It's got a lot of land potential for rezoning. We've identified that. It can grow and be a satellite city.
Right.
We identified the growth areas around Anglevale, around Gawler, around Concordia, a major development just east of Gawler, right out to Dublin, and of course Cudler, which is an area just south of Gawler. It's a huge area that's been hobby farms and the like for many years. That area is going to be rezoned for high density growth near the railway station. So there's a couple of railway stations, there's sidings really at Cudler and one other. In the forward years they'll be developed to have greater density, medium rise apartments, as will the towns of Elizabeth and Salisbury. They are cities that are going to have a lot of growth and a lot of expansion. The housing trust,
because of the proximity to
you've got the electric train all the way to Gawler to the city, and so that transport link, as we do have an electric train too, all the way down to Onkaparinga, down to Colonnade Shopping Centre. So that and the freeways open up a lot of movement. So that's identified particularly where opportunities lie. We will be working with all of those councils. So all of the councils in our GARP paper have been given targets. So we've looked at where can the growth go, and which areas can take more growth. So those councils have been given until 2026 to come back with their housing strategy back to the Commission and say, right, we think we can have more development here, less development here. We will be keen to work with those councils to say, well, we do need to accommodate more people, particularly in the established areas, and we've been bringing out other policies in the established areas, future living code amendments out now, granny flats, all those kinds of things in the established areas.
But they're the smaller things.
They're the smaller things, but they all feed into the affordability and the housing crisis story that we all share across this country. So we're very keen to ensure that we have a balanced land supply. So under the Act, we're required to have 15 years rolling supply of available land to ensure there's balance in the market and affordability. We also now are recognising we need to have 5 years of land that's developed, i.e. it's got the infrastructure. So what we don't want to have is a situation where we found ourselves in across the country at the moment where governments are struggling with the infrastructure piece to bring that land to market so that we can contain land prices. We certainly want the development sector to be able to develop affordably and make a dollar. Without them we don't have land supply, as it were. So it needs to be a balance between them bringing land to market. We do have, however, a lot of fragmented land. Many years ago, the state government owned a lot of government land, as I'm sure they did in the other states, and the government would then release that land in a timely manner. There haven't been, government hasn't been acquiring large acreages in the last 20 or 30 odd years, and so a lot of land is fragmented. So we have to work really hard in terms of coordinating all of that to make sure we can ensure there's a minimum of 5 years developable land that's got the infrastructure that can come to market. So we have a balance in the market, and so people delivering land can make an appropriate financial return. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
With the fragmentation of that land, what I also wanted to ask about is this. So kind of the government has this strategy, and then organically there might be a whole lot of people moving in. like what we've just experienced.
Yep.
So how do you then sort of resolve this challenge of fragmented opportunities,
So,
developable land?
Stan, another really important initiative of the P&D Act, the new Act, it enabled private landowners to bring code amendments, rezonings to the Commission.
Okay.
Prior to that, under the old Development Act, councils or the state government were the principal partners bringing land to the market. We have now a system where if you own a large piece of land and you're looking to rezone it, it might be an inner city old estate of an industrial estate that you want to create as a mixed use. You want to have it rezoned. You, as a private proponent, can bring that to the Commission forward. So we have now got literally every week we're getting applications coming into us virtually. So this is an important part of the supply.
Right.
So if you've got a parcel of land in an area that you see the need, and the government and the Commission agrees that yes, we can do this, then that is fast tracking bringing land to market, which is a really important initiative in South Australia. Importantly, in the GARP, we've also identified that, particularly across the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan, we need to ensure there's sufficient land zone for employment land. Now, it's not the old smoky factories of 100 years ago, but they are modern mixed-use communities. So we are seriously looking at a whole raft of strategic infill sites across that metropolitan Adelaide, and that includes colonnades, it includes shopping centres, it includes along railway lines, north and south.
So you're talking about things like Tonsley,
Lightsview, West Lakes, Glenside. There are a lot of
larger
blocks
where you can do different
For example, Villawood have got 4 projects now in South Australia, and they're successful projects. They're in the early stages, but I can tell already they're going to be successful projects. So we need to get a balance of employment land so that not all the employment opportunities are in the north or in the south. They're across metropolitan Adelaide. So a lot of the investigations we've done in the last 6 months through the Property Council and others is, what does the future look like? What does industry look like? What are the new jobs, white collar jobs, high tech jobs? In South Australia, of course, we've got major works in defence, space and the like. So those key jobs need to be near where people live. So also part of our thinking has been that we want to have people living and working as close as they can to limit the amount of vehicle use and travel, which is expensive, time wasting, and doesn't create a lifestyle, positive experience to live. So in the new areas, we're identifying new zonings as well to encourage mixed-use developments, not just the monoculture, single-storey landscape of 3 and 4 bedroom homes. Because across Australia, and South Australia is no different, what we've learned in the last few years is that not only have we've got immigration, we don't have the immigration the Eastern Seaboard has, but we've got significant immigration, but we also have new household formations. What that means is that singles, couples, not getting married yet, maybe getting married but not having children yet, maybe never having children, empty nesters, people like myself. You know, I live in one of my apartments in the city. Love it. So you've got all these new house forms and house typologies that we need, and so we're very conscious of how do we accommodate for diversity and choice across Greenfield and the brownfield sites and right across metropolitan Adelaide with the rezoning. So that's an important piece as well, because it talks to the affordability, which we all know is a major issue across the country.
So does the GARP then identify and say, right, within this area you need to have this much medium density, this much single dwelling sort of areas?
Yes, we will. So we've given the councils until 2026 to come back with their housing strategies. And those strategies will need to have a mix of accommodation types and we have a whole lot of policy suites within our code for different types of development, greater densities and mixed use and height and all those things. All those things will be reviewed as we go forward. And so, for example, at the moment, the state government has purchased the brewery site on Port Road. And they'll have 1,000 odd dwellings on that site, and there'll be something like 30% will be affordable. The government has got other sites. They've got a lot of housing trusts, old estates, going back in the northern suburbs, or across metropolitan Adelaide really, they are all going to be now master planned and brought to market in the forward years, and they'll have mixed use. I'm chairing a little workshop at the moment looking at that missing middle housing. How can we have, instead of just chopping up blocks of land for 2-to-1s, 3-to-1s and so on, how can we get a 3-storey built form that fits into the more established communities? Because part of this too is we need to maintain social licence.
Exactly.
So if we don't maintain the social licence, and one other thing I should mention is that we haven't increased the 2-for-1 general infill.
Right.
We haven't increased that. What we are focusing on is strategic infill. So we're looking at larger sites. The government's got some very good sites. They've got the Army Barracks on Anzac Highway, the Ashford site.
Right.
That will be a major redevelopment. The government has intervened right next to that site on Anzac Highway, for example. There's a major development, mixed-use development. The old Lacornia site, the government intervened. They bought the site when the Kaufman project didn't go ahead, wanting to get greater mixed use out of that site. It'll be apartments, townhouses, a shopping centre, it'll be fantastic. They're the kinds of things that we need to do within our very large footprint of South Australia to ensure we get more people living where there's transport, services, closer to your job, and mixed, diverse accommodation types. 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, townhouses, apartments, wherever possible. So there's a cultural change, and this started a decade ago under former Minister Rao with buying the Clipsal site at Bowden.
Okay.
And they bought the Clipsal site, and that was the start of the transport-orientated developments, which we see nationally. It's got the tram, it's got the train. You walk over the road, and you're in the parklands. And so that's been very successful. It's 10 years on now. MAB Corporation are doing the development adjacent to it, the old oil tanker works there. That'll be a major development. So we're getting good interest through interstate and international investors into South Australia because of the underlying quality of the lifestyle here, the relative affordability to other parts of the country, and all the other attributes that South Australians have, particularly our schools and so on. So the Commission plays a really important role here in ensuring we have this mixed opportunities to ensure land comes to market. But for your listeners, there'll be a lot of land supply required in the north where, to my previous comments, where the land is actually available. And so a lot of activity is occurring in that area. So a lot of people are having to coordinate the timing of that with the infrastructure piece that I mentioned to you before.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so another couple of questions. One that I wanted to know about, and we sort of touched on it earlier on, but when the GARP was first released with the digitisation of it, Kangaroo Island was the first.
Yes.
And then Greater Adelaide came next. So what are the other parts?
So Stan, we by the end of next year we'll have done the other 5 regional plans. The Kangaroo Island one, and your audience can go to that one as well, Kangaroo Island Regional Plan. That's fully digitised. We've had a lot of feedback from the community. They can go in, as I said to you, they can actually look at where their block of land is, what's the potential rezoning, what's the biodiversity story, what's the tourism story, what's the transport picture. It's all there in the layers. You can click on and off layers to see what it all means.
Cool.
It's a fantastic planning tool, but future governments will be able to use this to ensure the infrastructure story rolls out in plenty of years ahead to ensure that we don't have bottlenecks and situations where there's a lack of infrastructure. That will put a lot of pressure on future treasurers, of course, but that's what planning's all about.
Yeah, great. And the last question was, so Adelaide, I think last year was voted as the most beautiful city in the world. How does this then maintain that strategy going forward to make sure that we don't lose that title?
Well, as I mentioned to you, of the whole of the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan, which is 11,000 square metres, only 10% of that's actually available for development. The rest of it's right through the Adelaide Hills, our wineries, our orchards, our beautiful small townships. The environmental food production area goes right across all of that. Then, of course, you've got our character preservation districts, which are preserved. That's the Barossa and McLaren Vale. Within an hour you can be in both. And so all of those attributes of South Australia and our beautiful beaches won't change. And so all those
On the hills, you can't do very much with that either.
all those attributes will be maintained, and so the planning system plays an important role in sustaining good growth and our industry. So we need all the jobs that occur in the hills. Tourism's a major one. People love coming here. If you stay, the Adelaide Hills is about a 30-minute drive away with a range of fabulous wineries, accommodations, B&Bs, all those kinds of things. The Commission is also working at the moment on a policy for, in the wine regions, how can we sensitively introduce some major tourism accommodation.
Right.
So we're looking at how can we do that. We're doing work at the moment because we know there's a need for quality, not just little Airbnbs.
Hotel developments.
Yes, resort type, but carefully located, not on ridge tops, and so on. So you've got to maintain the landscapes and those things for the long haul. So we are trying to get the balance between economic activity, which is super important in the planning system, but maintaining, to your point, the qualities that make South Australia an enviable place to live and raise a family and conduct a business.
Yeah. So within that paper, hotel operators, for example, could see where there might be available land?
Yes, but in the character preservation districts, that's a new policy we're working on. The GARP is only one task that the Commission has. We are dealing. We're not stopping code amendments, rezonings. They're coming at us all the time. So we're not waiting for this. We're continuing to rezone land. We're continuing to identify the opportunities that we need. And so the GARP is only one. It's a big piece of work. And it has long-term implications for your members listening now as to where they can be assured of where the growth is going. So if you're looking to take an option on some land for a period of time, you'll know that's where what the zoning's going to be or where it may be. You'll also know where perhaps to stay away from. So if there are parts of Virginia, for example, where market gardens, we're not rezoning those areas. We're not currently rezoning any areas sort of north of roads where they're going up, that's valuable farming land. So we also work with PIRSA so that any of the land that we're rezoning is not high valued agricultural land. Because we need to ensure we maintain sustainable farming. And so under John Rao, the previous planning minister, he had a target of 85% general infill to not grow the footprint. We don't have a target in the GARP because we realise we've identified enough land for that 30-year horizon for in greenfield and in strategic infill, and without any new rezoning for general infill, there's enough. What it comes down to is ensuring we have the infrastructure to accommodate that. And so, and that even within metropolitan Adelaide, you know, the sewer, power and water was designed for another era of low density housing. And so all the infrastructure piece needs to be brought to mind as well. When for example, these apartment buildings I build, I've got to upgrade the fire service and put a transformer in the building, all these things. But that's all part of a changing world that we live in where people want to live.
That's right, very good. Awesome. Look, that's all that we sort of wanted to cover on this episode of the Land Pioneers podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Stan. Bye, everybody.